Hey, hello everybody. It's a pleasure to be talking to Australia. After a very long time, I have to say. I used to live in Tasmania in 2003. And well, I really, really love your country, and I think it's a wonderful place. And it's very good to me to know that now Melbourne Filmoteca is taking our film Con Voz en la Radio to your beautiful lands. I'm saying hello from Costa Rica. My name is Sebastian Fournier. So I'm basically in the other side of the world, about 17 hours behind your schedule. Uh, I have to say, the vision of community radio that I have now comes from Tasmania. Rather than finding, like two-headed people and all those things you say it's there. No, well, I found really nice community radio, as it is, I know, in the rest of Australia. Uh, but really, really, I enjoyed working with community radios there. So when I had to go back to my country, that same year, 2003, I kind of asked to myself, why is it that my country hasn't got that? Uh, so first of all, it's so good to be in Australia showing this film because that's where my vision of community radio personally comes from. But then, well, it goes. I studied for many years radio, community radio, media, etc., and began to work with communities. I realized there are huge efforts of people within my country trying to make community radio, but it has been so hard. Uh, for some reason, and that kind of goes to the history, I guess. The rest of Latin America in the second half of the 20th century had like a very convulsed uh, history, like a lot of military coups and uh, social struggle. So they kind of found the necessity of having community radio, and the pressure of the people was enough to force governments to change uh, policy about community radio. But that didn't happen in my country. In my country, we had this vision. We were so democratic. We were, because we didn't have an army, so we didn't have any coups. We didn't have any failures in the government, like losing our government or anything. We were a very stable country throughout the 20th century. So, given that, uh, the people in Costa Rica didn't realize the need of community radio really. So the voice of the communities was joined to other sorts of projects, like the church having a radio station that kind of involved the voices of people, or an institution trying to make distance learning through through little what they call cultural radios. But they weren't really community radios. They were led by these institutions that once the population of those communities tried to question the status quo, they were just sacked. And that's what the documentary shows, that reality, the difficulty. Because we also have another issue that is completely the opposite with Australia. Australia is a huge country with a very small population. So that means that communities have, like far away from cities, have very scarce signals coming in, and there is a lot of space available to create community radio. We don't have that. Costa Rica is a country where we have a very saturated media spectrum, where there is a volcano called Iridu volcano, where you can basically there, a broadcast from there can reach 70% of our territory. So that means most of the concessions of radio and television were given to a broader country spectrum. They were given to the whole of the country, even though they don't cover the whole of the country, but the paper says so. So when you go to ask for a frequency, the government will tell you, oh, well, accordingly with the papers, um, the whole media spectrum is saturated, so you can't broadcast. And many of those radio stations that we have that are saturating the media spectrum are only kind of music jukes boxes. They don't really broadcast community issues. They are commercial. Commercial radio fees are really cheap here. It's like, I don't know, 5, 6 Australian dollars a year for a commercial radio station. So that means basically most regional radio stations have been bought by big companies in San Jose or transnational companies, and that has left the voices of the communities behind because supposedly we are in such a democratic country that communities don't need a voice there. And that's not the truth. The people is really desperate. We have a lot of pirate radio stations broadcasting outside of San Jose just because the people is desperate to communicate. We also have a lot of initiatives of community televisions as well. But the problem of those community televisions is they don't have frequencies. They are linked to the local cable operators. So in a world where big transnational companies are buying these small cable operators, uh, we are losing our regional television as well. So that's in the end, I think private, like big private companies, end up being as terrible as kind of authoritarian governments. In the end, transnational companies behave like authoritarian governments in terms of communication. They tend to wipe out other voices, everybody that thinks differently to their view of the world. And that's what's happening here. And it's a very, very hard issue to put through politically because, usually big companies are, like sacred and you can't question them. And we should question them. And that's about what this film is about a government that is not regulating frequencies correctly, and an issue that is not so easy to conceive in a country that seems very democratic. So I hope you enjoyed the film. Thank you very much to Melbourne Filmoteca for having us in the in the festival. And great to everybody, or as we would say in Costa Rica, pura vida. See you.